notre collègue Hans Dass. Nous le connaissons bien, nous travaillons beaucoup avec lui en ce moment. Il est directeur de la gestion des situations d'urgence à la Direction Générale ECO et nous sommes en contact évidemment quotidien car il est vraiment notre, comment dirais-je, our best friend à la Direction Générale ECO puisque c'est lui qui est en particulier chargé de l'activation du mécanisme européen de réponse civile aux crises. Nous aurons aussi avec nous, en lien vidéo, un représentant du bureau ukrainien de la Direction Générale ECO, à qui nous passerons la parole et qui nous donnera également son témoignage. Nous avons aussi la chance d'avoir avec nous Caroline Krupa, qui est collègue polonaise, qui est l'adjointe à la directrice générale de la coopération et de l'aide humanitaire au ministère polonais des Affaires étrangères, et elle donnera là aussi son témoignage sur ce que subit aujourd'hui la Pologne comme impact direct de la guerre en Ukraine. Nous aurons avec nous aussi en ligne Stefan Cahill. Il est coordonnateur pour le programme alimentaire mondial de la réponse d'urgence en Ukraine. Stefan, je crois que vous êtes stationné en Pologne et là aussi votre témoignage sera très précieux pour tous les acteurs humanitaires qui sont rassemblés dans cette pièce. Nous avons aussi Kevin Goldberg. Kevin est le directeur général d'une grande ONG française, Solidarité Internationale, très présente en Ukraine. Et le témoignage de Kevin sera également précieux pour nous. Nous avons aussi notre collègue Dorine Frasineanu, qui est un collègue diplomate moldave, travaillant auprès du Premier ministre de Moldavie. Évidemment, toutes nos pensées, toutes nos actions, tout notre cœur aussi se portent vers la Moldavie, pays particulièrement affecté par la crise ukrainienne. Et enfin, nous aurons comme secrétaire, en tant que secrétaire général de la Croix-Rouge ukrainienne, Maxime Dotsenko, qui sera avec nous en ligne. Et là aussi, le témoignage de ce qui se passe en Ukraine sera pour nous très, très utile. Et peut-être, mais au moment de lancer cet atelier, nous n'avons pu établir de collection avec lui. Nous aurons peut-être la chance d'avoir Anatoly Koutsevol, qui travaille au cabinet du Premier ministre ukrainien, mais qui nous a fait savoir qu'il était dans un bunker et que les liaisons étaient très compliquées. Si nous pouvons l'avoir tout à l'heure en ligne, ce serait formidable. Mais sinon, nous comprendrons évidemment parfaitement que les conditions de guerre qui prévalent en Ukraine ne lui permettent pas d'être avec nous. Voilà, donc ce que je vous propose, c'est peut-être que nous commencions tout de suite par des premiers témoignages par nos panélistes. Et peut-être, Amine, je vais commencer par vous passer la parole pour que vous puissiez nous présenter l'état des lieux de la situation humanitaire en Ukraine. Amine, je vous laisse la parole.
Thank you, Ambassador. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be with you here today and to address the audience, and I continue my journey to really communicate on the Ukraine crisis. I am Amin Awad. I'm the UN Crisis Coordinator for Ukraine. I'm based now, as we speak, in Ukraine. That's where I came from. The situation in Ukraine is dire, especially on the front line, where millions of people are moving and actually on the move as we speak. We already have about 8 million people displaced, almost 8 million people displaced internally. We have almost 4 million people who went across borders. The war is impacting another 12 to 14 million people who never left and are staying at their homes because of the economic situation. Economy in a country like this in transition and a high GDP of $141 billion, we can say that it does also disturb life as much as the war does disturb life. The closure of seaport, airport, factories, people abandoning the fields, the agricultural fields, and other type of services and commerce rendered a lot of businesses or brought them to a standstill. A lot of people lost their jobs of income, of livelihood, and therefore there is this high number of people who are impacted. When I turn to the war itself, the destruction is immense. Hospitals, homes, factories, of course, don't speak about the military installations that are not far also from people's homes and normal life, but also places of worship and many other infrastructure. People are cowering under in basements, under bombardments. Some of them are on the move, spending nights in the cold. The temperature drops sometimes in some places to below zero at night. The suffering is immense. I've been to the train station looking at people asking for their destination, whether their well-being. A lot of them, they don't know where they're going. They just want to get out of there because the fear actually overcome any sense of comprehension, any sense of thinking, or any sense of establishing or prioritizing people's life. Wars are really horrible. Even for those who are not in the war zone or the front lines, every few hours, the sirens go off in many parts of Ukraine simultaneously, 3, 4, 5 times a day, and people do go down to basements. It happens to me too, wherever I am. The sirens go off, and we have to go to the basement with everybody else. It's a war. And this population did not forget what happened during World War II. That brings back life, even if they're not from that generation. They have studied about it in history books. They see it in the TV screen, and they see the jets and the tanks in the streets. There is a grave humanitarian crisis. If we look at all sectors, there is deterioration in the economy, deterioration in the health system, there is deterioration in the financial and the banking system. In some places, there is no Ukrainian currency, there's no cash to exchange. There is no schools in many parts of the country. 1 million people do not have electricity. Another 900,000 do not have gas. And the list continues. People's life has been disrupted. The movement of people also putting a strain on neighboring countries. The war, and with this risk of a mishap or a mistake of nuclear, biological, or chemical war, it is also making people live in fear and anticipation. People are moving further and further from the conflict area to the western part of Ukraine, where it is really now under pressure, under strain. Housing is almost not available. The prices are going up, and people do not have income to really respond to their daily needs. Of course, men are staying behind to fight. Women and children, you find them on the train, buses, on foot, private cars, crossing international borders, or moving from one oblast or province to another. However, women also who did not leave, they are in the basement, they are in the bunker, and they are in the front line with men fighting the war on a daily basis. You can see them traveling from one place to another in military vehicles. There is neighborhoods, people who are recruited at neighborhood. So you have youth, women, anybody who can fight now is recruited for that war, and they're putting a resistance throughout. All the towns that are under attack, you will find battalions of men and women inside resisting, whether in Kiev itself or Odessa, Mariupol, and others. So there is a war that really made all of those people mobilize and go to the front line and try to defend their territories. What are we doing as the UN and other international NGOs or local NGOs? Let me start with the invisible. We're working with 115 local Ukrainian national NGOs. They're doing an incredible job. They know their people, they know their needs, they have the figures, the numbers in their fingertips as far as vulnerability, type of the profile of the population, and they're delivering. They're delivering massively. And that does not only come from the government, that comes from the people in the communities, in the neighborhood, to go out and help those who are out. My visits to all the train stations that I have been to, and the tens of thousands are packed in these train stations, I saw food, soup, sandwiches, water, and I saw there is an NGO working. I found that they're neighborhood groups. So they're very, very organized. The government itself is leaning forward, very organized. It's a digitalized government. They have the information on any citizen as far as their social security number or their tax number or their identification number, and that makes it very easy for us to really come to terms with population. What are our first priorities? 3 sectors. One is food. There is a need for food, and I think WFP and others who are covering these sectors are helping with that, and with the general support of the EU and others. The other sector is health. That country has not come out from the COVID-19. There are a lot of people in the intensive care units, and because of low vaccination, and there is need, as we have heard a few months ago in the rest of the world, for the need for oxygen cylinders and what have you because of the COVID.
If you can speed up a bit, just
equipment,
for the conclusion. Thank you very much.
Equipment and other in the medical sector, that's a need, and we are also launching or standing up a cash supply line that can cross lines and reach the population wherever they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amin. Thank you for your... merci beaucoup pour cet état des lieux qui sera probablement complété par Hans maintenant. Hans coordonne la réponse à la crise ukrainienne depuis Bruxelles ici. Tous les outils de la coopération et de l'action de l'Union européenne sont mobilisés pour la crise ukrainienne. Et Hans, évidemment, votre témoignage en tant que directeur de la réponse aux crises et du mécanisme Rescue sera pour nous très précieuse. Donc merci un petit peu de partager avec nous comment vous voyez la situation en Ukraine et ce que vous attendez des acteurs humanitaires qui sont là.
Thank you.
5 minutes maxi. Merci beaucoup.
Je fais de mon mieux. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amin, also for the very good introduction. We're nearly 4 weeks after the fighting has started, and the fighting has brought massive civilian suffering and deaths, large-scale displacement all over the country, and extensive damage to critical infrastructure. We're very clearly witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe without precedent on the European continent, with enormous needs. And against that background, the European Commission is fully committed to support the people of Ukraine, and we are doing, and we will continue to do, everything within our power to alleviate that human suffering and bring aid to those in need. And for that reason, we have immediately mobilized an unprecedented response using the 2 instruments that we have at our disposal for this. And we have, on the one hand, a civil protection mechanism through which we facilitate, coordinate, and support the mobilization of in-kind support, teams, assets, capacities of all sorts. And on the other hand, we have our traditional humanitarian aid funding instrument through which we support our humanitarian partners. And let me just say a few words about both of these. On the civil protection side, we are currently conducting what is the largest emergency response operation ever under the UCPM, the Civil Protection Mechanism. All of our 27 member states, plus Norway and Turkey, are providing immediate life-saving assistance, all sorts of materials and relief supplies. So far, over 8,000 tons of support has already been delivered within Ukraine, and much more is on its way. To that end, we have established logistic hubs in Poland, in Romania, starting from today also in Slovakia, and I really want to pay tribute to the enormous efforts that our Polish, Romanian and other colleagues are doing to help get support into Ukraine. These hubs are fully funded by the EU and at the disposal of all of our member states. And they are providing a lifeline of essential support right now. We're mobilizing medicines, hospital equipment, ambulances, food aid, shelter, personal protective equipment, fuel, power generators, and many, many other issues. In parallel, we're also supporting the neighboring countries. We're helping Moldova, which has equally requested assistance. We're helping Poland, we're helping Slovakia, and we're helping the Czech Republic. We are scaling up, and we're trying to innovate our response as much as we can. We are mobilizing for the first time ever the strategic reserve that we have at European level, and which is normally meant for Europe. For the first time ever, we're also deploying that outside the EU to the benefit of Ukraine. We are scaling up our medevac operations. We are providing medical care and evacuations for patients from the borders to hospitals all over Europe. 10,000 hospital beds across the Union are ready to receive patients. We're trying to work with the private sector, and we're setting up a very light system now to try and encourage also private sector donations. Equally, on the humanitarian side, our action has been immediate and comprehensive. Already since the start of the conflict in 2014, the EU and member states have provided well over 2.2 billion euros in humanitarian aid and early recovery and development assistance in Ukraine. With the start of the conflict now, we have immediately mobilized an initial amount of 93 million euros in humanitarian funding. We have shortened our procedures, and we have worked around the clock to make sure that that money is disbursed immediately to the partners. And we have 13 partners that are currently working with ECHO funding. In parallel, of course, our member states are providing equally vast amounts of funding, a total of 273 million from member states so far. And all of this is part of a broader package of 500 million euros worth of assistance announced by the President a few weeks ago. It is really reassuring to see that partners are scaling up, that they are present all over the country, and that action is taking place at many different levels now. Despite severe security and access constraints, humanitarian assistance is being delivered. And I just want to quote a few examples of the partners that we're teaming up with. ICRC has mobilized an 11-truck convoy. WFP has purchased 25,000 tons of food aid. People in Need, a local NGO, is doing fantastic work in shipping 500 tons of assistance regularly to Kiev, Dnipro, and Lviv. And there's many other examples, and I really want to pay tribute to the difficult work that all of our partners are doing, those I mentioned and also the others, obviously. Humanitarian hubs are being established in several locations across Ukraine now, where warehousing and logistical supplies can be brought together. We believe that this needs to be further developed, and we encourage all partners to further scale up. We also want to lead by example, and we are also trying to provide our own active contribution through this to the newly established European humanitarian response capacity, where we're currently looking at possible warehousing solutions and transport of relief items. It is obviously essential, and this is a message we need to keep advocating, it is essential to keep advocating for unimpeded humanitarian access and windows of silence. Our partners need to have the possibility to deliver assistance to those in need and to evacuate where possible. And I just want to finish by saying that ECHO is maintaining its presence in Ukraine. We have local staff on the ground. We also are currently looking to bring some of our international staff back into the country, and we are fully committed to continue our work together with all of you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Hans. Tu viens d'évoquer la présence d'une équipe d'ECHO sur place. Je voudrais d'ailleurs aussi saluer la présence parmi nous de Vivi Michou, la directrice générale d'ECHO, qui nous fait l'honneur d'être avec nous. Et donc, effectivement, tu viens d'indiquer que ECHO est présent en Pologne. Et nous avons d'ailleurs une vidéo avec un témoignage de l'équipe d'ECHO qui est présente, je crois, depuis Lviv. Donc, si on peut envoyer la petite vidéo, merci beaucoup.
Dear friends, so today Russia started war against Ukraine. You can hear the alarm system around city center. I am safe. Everything is fine. We hope for the for some good resolution. Dear friends, I am fine. I had to leave Kiev apparently by bike. So you can see the smoke behind me, what was shelled this night. So I will be very close to Kiev, but for my security I decided to change the location.
Dear colleagues, dear partners, dear friends, I am recording this message from Khmelnytsky in southwestern Ukraine. It has been almost a month since the war started, and I have had to change location over and over again to escape fighting, like many others here. My name is Volodymyr. I am from Ukraine and I work for Humanitarian Aid. Over the past weeks, I have seen things that I wish no one to experience. People's lives have been turned upside down. Everything happened so quickly that no one was prepared for this. Millions of women and children are fleeing the country to escape this war and find safety. Many people I know have left Ukraine. They packed their bags in 15-20 minutes. Some of them traveled for 5 days to reach the border. Others simply cannot leave. Older persons, people living with disabilities, we are surrounded by fighting, and many are stranded and have no way out. I hear of massive damage to people's apartments and houses. A friend of mine lost her apartment in Kyiv a few days ago. It was destroyed, burned down. She has lost everything. I don't know if my apartment in Kyiv will remain undamaged. Millions of people have no access to water, electricity, and heating. This is the case of one of my best friends, who is trapped now in a small town close to Kyiv, occupied by Russians. His wife and his child have fled to the area in western Ukraine, but he has been in a bomb shelter for almost 3 weeks now. He has been saving his phone battery to call his family for a few seconds a day, just to tell them that he is still alive. To do our job as humanitarian workers, we need access to the most vulnerable. And people need to be able to get to the health care without fear of harm, without fear of being bombed when they visit a hospital to get treatment. A few days ago, I talked to a man here in a village close by who has cancer and who has come from southern Ukraine, but he is unable to continue his treatment here. I see the needs around me. Many Ukrainian aid workers like me are staying in Ukraine to help. We are frontline responders. I am trying to focus on what I have been doing in the last 7 years and what I know to do best. People need our support. The displaced, those in transit, those who fled the country. They need food, water, healthcare, shelter and protection. Relief items and assistance have been coming already from the European Union states into Ukraine, with trains and trucks arriving every day. EU is organizing the delivery of these donations through the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. Inside Ukraine, the EU has already disbursed humanitarian funding to deliver urgent assistance in health, protection, shelter, cash to allow people to cover their basic needs through local markets. With this support, humanitarian organizations are already working tirelessly to reach those in need despite the security and access challenges. It isn't really a choice. We, as the humanitarian community, cannot fail, because if we do, it will cost lives.
Merci beaucoup, témoignage très poignant, bien entendu, et je pense qu'on peut tous louer ce soir le courage de toutes ces équipes qui sont présentes sur place, les équipes de la DG ECO, les équipes de nos pays respectifs et les équipes des ONG aussi, qui bravent la guerre pour faire tout simplement leur métier. On a dressé en quelque sorte la scène, et maintenant ce qu'il faut, c'est de voir comment nous pouvons répondre aux différents défis humanitaires qui sont ceux de l'Ukraine. Et ces défis, ce sont aussi ceux des pays du voisinage. Nous sommes heureux d'avoir avec nous Karolina Krupa. Karolina travaille au ministère polonais des Affaires étrangères. Ce matin, nous étions avec elle pour une réunion des États membres, et Karolina nous a fait un témoignage extrêmement touchant, émouvant, de ce que vit en ce moment la Pologne. Karolina, si vous pouvez partager avec nous quels sont aujourd'hui les besoins de la Pologne et ce que vous attendez de l'Europe.
Merci, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karolina Krupa, and as I've been introduced, I work in the Development Cooperation Department in the Polish MFA. We are responsible for humanitarian aid in Poland. I'd like to begin by expressing my government's and the people of Poland's gratitude for all the support and all the assistance that we've been receiving over the past couple of weeks. And I think that I can speak also on behalf of Ukraine, which we are channeling the support that goes to Ukraine, and we are seeing an enormous mobilization of not only the international community, but also of civil society worldwide, of business representatives worldwide, and I've been witnessing all the gestures of good heart over the past 4 weeks. If I'm about to share with you some of Polish experience, I think that you wouldn't be surprised if I say that we were all expecting this, we won't be in this situation. And while we've been preparing for the worst, we have been hoping for the best. And we were maybe caught a little bit by surprise that the war actually began. And we had to step up our effort and our assistance basically overnight. We have within our system our government reserves, strategic reserves agency that has been our main partner in terms of delivering humanitarian aid worldwide. And this is also the main actor that is responsible for provision of all the strategic supplies for Poland. But the colleagues that work in, as we call them, RARs, have really made a tremendous effort, and they've really stepped up to become a partner for the DG ECHO, for EU CPM, but also they've become a hub for all the assistance that is coming from outside of the EU. Because as you can imagine, we do have lots of deliveries and humanitarian assistance coming to Poland, for Ukraine through Poland, from entire world. So RARS, our government strategic reserves agency, is the main counterpart for them. We have made, apart from the hubs which have been created by EU CPM and by UN, we have made available our own warehouses for our own strategic reserves. We allow all the assistance that is coming in for Ukraine to be stored there securely, safely, and also to be delivered to Ukraine whenever there is a need for it. What I'd like to emphasize here is that we are working in close cooperation with Ukrainian side. We are in everyday contact with Ukrainian embassy in Warsaw, and the aid that we are delivering to Ukraine is also in close coordination and on explicit request of the Ukrainian side. And I think that this is very, very important, that we are trying to manage a sort of a system that allows us for timely delivery and for reaching the ones which are in need in time. So the support and the cooperation, everyday cooperation with Ukraine is something that is of crucial importance here. Obviously, when it comes to challenges under current circumstances, we are not in a position to ensure that the targeted deliveries of assistance. We are trying to make sure that the aid will reach Ukraine, but when it comes to reaching very targeted places or populations, we are not in a position to do that under current circumstances. But we are trying, and the Ukrainian side is trying to do that to the extent possible. And I've been asked to maybe also touch upon a little bit on what can we do in the Team Europe spirit. First of all, in the Team Europe spirit, we have to respond to Ukrainian needs. We know what is needed in there. Ukrainian side is submitting their requests on a daily basis. We have this in UCPM. My plea is let's try and respond to what is really needed in Ukraine these days. But also, let's not forget that where we can showcase our Team Europe spirit is also in other neighboring countries, such as Moldova, which is also experiencing an influx of refugees and is also stepping up. And we are grateful for everything that they are doing, but Moldova cannot be left alone. And Team Europe also has to be visible and seen there. And I think I've exceeded my time, but apologies for that. And thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carolina. And I think you have to go back to Warsaw tonight, and you will leave us soon to catch your plane. You just mentioned, and that was also mentioned by Amin and by Hans, the immensity of the basic needs of the Ukrainian people. inside and outside, especially food needs. And we have the chance having with us Stefan Cahill, is the coordinator for the World Food Programme from Poland, from Katowice. So maybe, Stefan, you can elaborate a bit for us about what are the needs and how we could mobilize the humanitarian actors to help, feeding the Ukrainian population inside and outside. Stefan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And my thanks to being on this panel. I think it gives us an opportunity to explain what WFP is doing. And some of the people who spoke before me have been very eloquently putting that across. I think from WFP's angle, we currently have 25,000 tons of food, which is going into Ukraine or is about to, or is in Ukraine itself. We have another 30,000 tons, which we've actually procured. So from a food angle, I think that we have enough until the end of April. So from that side, I think we are okay. However, some of the issues that we're facing are quite critical. And they've already been raised by Hans. I think our most critical issue today is access to populations in need. How do we access those people in conflict areas, directly in conflict areas? And how do we access people in encircled cities, such as Mariupol today? As of today, we have a convoy ready to move from Dnipro into Mariupol, and are just waiting for authorization to do it. So really the issue is now about politically, how do we ensure access to those populations? We see that Ukraine is a country which has an excess of food production. And WFP wants to ensure that we're not importing or do not need to import food into Ukraine. What we need to be able to do is pushing that food aid to buy commodities in Ukraine itself in order to ensure those markets maintain in place. And that for us is very important. So maintaining the private sector and ensuring those markets stay open, that people can get things in the supermarkets that they need, that's first and foremost in our mind. We also need to consider as well, of course, as WFP, is that we have enough food until the end of April. We need $57 million in order to feed people beyond April. So this is also a call for donors as well to step up now, step up early, in order that we can make the procurement in Ukraine and ensure that those markets stay in place. We've already set up hubs as well in Romania and Poland. We have 7 warehouses set up throughout Ukraine as well, as far east as Dnipro. We're providing services not only for food, but as WFP is the lead agency for the logistics cluster, we're also providing warehousing and transport for the whole of the humanitarian sector, including health, WHO, plus the 140 partners or so of the logistics cluster. And we really want to ensure that we're helping those local NGOs, who are best placed in order to support them, either with transportation, with trucks, and of course with food itself. I think also we need to think about what is going to happen. What are the possibilities of what would happen? And of course, our supply chains at the moment are robust. The transport road routes, the rail routes that we're using into Kiev and into Kharkiv. However, if they were to be targeted in any way, that would, of course, be a major obstacle to a humanitarian operation. So we need to ensure that those supply lanes are remained open. And in the back of our mind at the same time is not only those supply chains or supply lines, it's also about fuel and energy. How do we ensure that for humanitarians, but also for the private sector, that there's enough fuel in the country, that those markets remain open, that those stations remain open, that there's enough energy to run those factories, so those processing plants, those transport companies, those food producers, in order to ensure that the shock is not worsened. And I think that's the real call that we have out today as WFP to do that. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and we appreciate very much your very practical and operational contribution. Les États se mobilisent, les institutions européennes et internationales se mobilisent, nous en avons eu des témoignages, mais les ONG aussi se mobilisent. Nous avons la chance d'avoir avec nous Kevin. Have a safe return to Warsaw. Et Kevin Goldberg est le directeur général d'une grande ONG française qui s'appelle Solidarité Internationale, présente en Ukraine. Et Kevin, votre témoignage aujourd'hui est important pour nous. Comment les ONG peuvent-elles efficacement agir en Ukraine?
Merci. Dear distinguished delegates and colleagues, thank you for giving me this opportunity to bring our contribution to this panel. If you don't mind, I'd like to start with the obvious. I think we, and when I mean here, it's we as Solidarity International, but it's also we as the humanitarian community, we were really not ready for this. Our teams were not ready for a full-fledged conflict of such a high intensity. Our humanitarian system was probably not ready for a war that would add 15 million people at least to the 274 million that were already in need of humanitarian assistance and protection around the world. Yet, with a bit of hurdles, we all moved as quickly as possible to accomplish our mission, which is basically saving lives in the front of a new emergency. At Solidarity International, we sent our emergency team to Ukraine on the 28th of February to conduct our first assessments. We now have teams based in Lviv, in Uman, which is more or less 200 kilometers away from Kiev, in Dnipro and in Odessa. And from these locations, we are also able to send aid to cities on the front line, such as Mykolaiv and Mariupol. So as you all know, there are three kinds of people in need of humanitarian assistance in Ukraine right now. There are the ones that are in transit, the ones that are internally displaced, and the ones that are trapped in areas directly affected by the conflict. For the people in transit, what we see now is that they move mostly with trains, with small vans and cars of civilian volunteers that make shifts between different cities. And when they stop somewhere, well, they need food, they need a place to rest or to spend the night. And in almost every location, local aid groups and civilian volunteers have stepped in since the first day of the crisis. They donate food that is cooked in the nearby restaurant, items bought at the local supermarket. But we all know that with a war that might last for months, the capacity of volunteers to continue to help with such an intense rhythm, well, it might at some point fade away. So this is where I believe professional humanitarian actors have to play a part. We need to partner with these local organizations. We need to help them continue their work by providing them with financial capacity, in-kind donations, and expertise. At the moment, Solidarity International is directly supporting IDPs in transit in Lviv and in Uman train station. We help our local partners distribute 2,000 hot meals and snacking per day. And we target particularly the people that are transiting at night at the train station. For a very easy reason, volunteers at some point need also to get some sleep. We plan to continue this and to extend this support to new locations. Then you have the millions of internally displaced people. And it has been said, what we see is that it's harder and harder to get a place to stay, prices are rocketing, and people have left their homes with very little, so they cannot sustain themselves. What we want to do is to quickly rehabilitate empty places so that they can become suitable to accommodate families. And we also need multi-purpose cash assistance programs to step up as soon as possible. Finally, and I believe this is the largest category, you have the people staying in areas that are directly affected by the conflict. Ukraine has an aging population and many elderlies have decided to stay home. People are also trapped in places where they are unable to take the road. And obviously, the severity of the humanitarian situation varies from one place to the other. But you are all aware of besieged cities cut from supplies, facing massive destruction of infrastructure and residential buildings. As diplomatic talks and the confliction access to aid have shown only limited success so far, unfortunately, we focus on setting small-scale supply lines with local partners that currently use the small utility vehicle to try accessing cities on the front line at the risk of their life. And we hope to be able to work as soon as possible on wash repairs and rehabilitation to restart water supplies and to grow this movement. I just want to end with a word about coordination between NGOs, between different partners and agencies. So Solidarity International, it's a medium-sized NGO, and I believe our added value lies mostly in our presence in the field, in our determination to bring our expertise to hard-to-reach areas, and also our ability to make, I'd say, tailor-make interventions with local partners. We give a major importance to coordination, and obviously we try to coordinate with other NGOs, but also with actors with great logistical and financial capacities, such as the UN, but also other major aid agencies. You are the ones that can actually make it possible for us to work. You ensure that the aid mechanism work. You're able to talk with the governments. You're able to bring the technical support, the logistics, the massive amount of goods that have been transported to various locations. And we couldn't do the job without you, for sure. We also couldn't do the job without the funding of our donors. Things could probably have started better, but it's not time to actually study how things have been put in place. What we need now is to win the race against time. We need money to materialize on the ground. We need aid to access people who need it. Thank you.
Merci Kevin, message bien reçu. Nous avons parlé de la situation en Pologne, en Roumanie, dans les autres pays qui sont membres de l'Union européenne et qui bénéficient évidemment de la solidarité européenne. Mais il y a un pays qui est voisin de l'Ukraine, qui n'est pas encore membre de l'Union européenne, mais qui non seulement a droit à notre sympathie, mais a droit aussi au fort soutien de l'Union européenne face à la crise qu'il subit sur son sol. Ce pays, c'est la Moldavie. Et nous avons la chance d'avoir avec nous Dorine Frazianu, qui est le conseiller du Premier ministre moldave, qui par ailleurs est un parfait francophone, et qui va nous donner son témoignage sur ce qui se passe en Moldavie, et qui surtout nous demandera ce que nous devons faire pour votre pays, chère Dorine.
Oui, merci beaucoup. I'm going to speak in English so that si ça vous dérange pas. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting to give a voice to the government of the Republic of Moldova. As my colleague said, no one imagined, and especially not my generation, that a full-scale war would happen on the European continent. The Republic of Moldova strongly condemned the military attack on Ukraine, and we stand united with the Ukrainian people in this hour of need. Since the first day of the military attacks on Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova has been fully exposed to all the consequences of the conflict. As the invasion unfolded and the Ukrainians were fleeing the country, it was actually the people of Moldova that have shown incredible unity and solidarity as they mobilized to help those people crossing into the country, many of them who had only little time to gather their possessions before leaving. It is actually heartwarming to see how many of our countrymen have joined the efforts in this difficult moment, as Moldovans were bringing to the border food, clothes, donating money, or even opening their homes to the refugees. The government took all the necessary measures as well to deal with the influx and to provide all the needed assistance. First of all, the government, for a decision of the Prime Minister, we created the Single Center for Crisis Management, which manages the crisis through dedicated sectoral groups dealing with accommodation, logistics, transport, health, education, and so on. Our border control staff have been working relentlessly, and more than 5,000 volunteers organized themselves in meeting the Ukrainians at the border with food, drinks, and blankets. Over the past 26 days, more than 367,000 refugees from Ukraine entered the territory of Moldova. Many of them continued their trip further to join their relatives in the EU. So we have created green corridors of Romania. We have given buses, trains, and even airlifts to different EU countries. Yet, more than 101,000 refugees, out of which 49,000 minors, continue to stay in our country as they have nowhere else to go. As it currently stands, the Republic of Moldova is receiving the highest number of Ukrainian refugees per capita, which represents approximately 4%. So for a non-EU country who has never faced such a crisis, the consequences are quite unprecedented. At the same time, on the 25th of February, we requested activation of the EU Civil Protection Mechanism. We have asked also the EU delegation in Chisinau to help coordinate the EU member states' response in a joint effort of Team Europe. So we had the first deliveries that arrived on the 2nd of March. This help is obviously very important, and we appreciate the support of the member states and we continue to rely on their support to the government and to the people. We're also grateful to the UN agencies which have mobilized under the technical coordination of the UNHCR since the first days of the conflict in providing the relevant support to the Moldovan government to effectively manage the crisis. So we have received tents, mattresses, generators, hygiene kits, clothes, and so on that are so needed and for which we are so grateful. However, the burden on Moldovan authorities is still significant, and the scarce available sources in the budget are becoming increasingly difficult to manage. I want to just mention that for my country, this crisis is taking place against the backdrop of an inflation that now is 18%, and it's predicted to be 30% due to the war. We have a financing gap which is of 5% of GDP and a budget deficit that will raise up to 9% in a country with one of the lowest GDP in Europe, as well as an extremely complicated situation in the energy sector. Moldova is 100% dependent on Russian energy and also essentially electricity from the Transnistrian region, which is controlled by the Russians. All these things are leading to a rapid worsening of the economic situation of the country and a significant fall in the standards of living of the local population too. So in this unprecedented humanitarian situation, we're addressing all foreign partners, be it bilateral, multilateral, a consolidated request for assistance for immediate priorities, which are first and foremost providing direct financial assistance, as currently the Republic of Moldova is using its own already very limited resources to pay for extra hours for staff, diesel, gasoline we still received, but we still much more for the local authorities, for the families. As I was saying, 90% of the refugees are actually in families, while only 10% are in refugee accommodation centers. And also continued humanitarian assistance for the basic needs of foreign citizens fleeing the war. Unfortunately, this is very important because we need to be able to cover, some of the costs that the government has to maintain economic and financial stability. But also this means to maintain socio-political stability, because in our country the opposition is still pro-Russian, and we can see how they're already starting to use the situation to have gains. Other than that, we're very grateful that, of course, the Ukrainian people are the ones that are suffering the most, and we have to help Ukraine. But all we ask is to also help Moldova to be able to keep being a safe haven and to be able to continue helping those in need.
Thank you, Doreen. Thank you for what you have said. But you can go back to Chisinau tonight, sure of the countless support of Europe and its member states. You know that. Okay. After these visions coming from the neighboring countries, I think it's time now to have also the vision from inside, and we have the chance having with us online Maxim Dotsenko. Maxim, you are heading the Ukrainian Red Cross Society. Please, could you share this afternoon with us how you see things going in Ukraine now, and what are your needs, your urgent needs, and what is your message for the humanitarian community which is gathered today in Brussels for you?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for opportunity to be here, dear colleagues, dear participants, dear panelists. It's a big pleasure to have an opportunity to talk with you, to share our thoughts with you. So for today, terrible situation remains in many regions and cities of Ukraine. The shellings of civilians has left many people without water, electricity, gas, communication, and food. Many people live for several weeks in unprepared bomb shelters and basements, which really leads to various diseases, and we don't have access to them. They need additional medical attention. We see the greatest impact of vulnerable groups, people with disabilities, people with serious illnesses, or the wounded people who are in basements but often do not have extra supplies such as food, water, medicine, and cannot get out, and do not have a mobile connection to other assistance. Really, it's terrible to understand when you cannot help to these people. Due to heavy shellings of civilian infrastructure, families have moved in search of safer places. And we heard for now the number that around 4 million people have crossed the Ukrainian border since February 24. Most of those living with women and children, and you can imagine the number of internally displaced persons. Currently, the priority needs of the Ukrainian Red Cross population are trauma kits, first aid kits, and medical support for wounded. People who have been trapped in bomb shelters due to shellings, as well as people who have been forced to flee their homes, are in dire need of food, hygiene kits, medical treatment, and basic necessities. We here in Ukraine, together with all volunteers and staff, analyzing the needs, collecting the data, and provide assistance, working through Ukrainian Red Cross branches. We have around 200 branches all over Ukraine, including our teams in Mariupol, in Kharkiv, in the cities which still blocked and we don't have access to the Mariupol still. So we're working with local communities, spontaneous volunteers doubling since the beginning of the war, and we have for now 6,000 Ukrainian volunteers, including spontaneous all around the country. So we also continuing educational work on international humanitarian law, on mine safety, and we continue first aid trainings for the people who need this. So we covered more than 50,000 people with these trainings. Staff and volunteers donate medicines and medical supplies to the medical facilities. We deliver humanitarian aid to bomb shelters, hospitals, hand over household appliances to help the affected population, as well as arrange places for temporary stay for displaced people. Also, if necessary, we transport people who are in serious conditions to medical facilities. As well, we transport people with limited mobility from dangerous places to the bomb shelters. Since February 24, Ukrainian Red Cross volunteers and staff have provided assistance to more than 300,000 people all around Ukraine, and support evacuation of about 60,000 people from places of active hostilities. In addition to this, Ukrainian Red Cross emergency response teams are on duty at border crossing points, arranging places for mother and child, provide people with water, food, and hygiene items. Ukrainian Red Cross, for now, together with movement partners, established 3 warehousing and logistic hubs in Western Ukraine. It's around 10,000 square meters of warehouses, and for now, around 2,000 tons of assistance have been shipped through national societies with support of our movement partners. So if we're talking about like middle and long-term perspectives, I support that we need to focus on cash and vouchers programs, because to provide the economic security of the people who are affected by this war. Of course, we can think about shelter for the IDPs if it's requested by authorities. And one of course, of the most priority have to be health programs in order to support state medical system, because like the pressure on this on the system will be incredible in further months. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. I'm already in time.
Thank you very much, Maxime, and we wish you all a roll of applause for you.
Thank you.
Our hearts are with you, dear Maxime, here from Brussels to where you are in Ukraine. So I think we have finished with these various echoes coming from Brussels, from the neighboring countries, from Ukraine. And now we'll have 2 very short comments also from the ground. We'll have with us Mahir Safarli, who is representing the High Commission for Refugees. Apparently, Mahir, you are in a car somewhere in Ukraine too. Could you very briefly, in 2 minutes, give us your vision and what's the message you have to address today to the European Humanitarian Forum? Mahir, the floor is yours from where you are.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think I can only, of course, join all my colleagues, humanitarian colleagues who were part of today's meeting that they addressed. And of course, there were key messages addressed by the UN Crisis Coordinator. And like from our side, UNHCR, of course, for us, the overall goal of the operation delivery is in the areas of protection, shelter, NFIs, and multi-purpose cash assistance providing in order to basically, help and as much as possible cover. Major, of course, stays as it was mentioned, the safe and timely humanitarian access. Indeed, this is something that also makes quite problematic for us in terms of delivery of the humanitarian aid. We have been already scaled up quite a lot with the core relief items, trying to also to reach as much as possible to these hard to reach areas. And already was mentioned by the WFP colleagues in terms of interagency convoys delivering the assistance. We are contributing also to these convoys, but practically there's so many hurdles to these in terms of humanitarian corridors enabling us to deliver, because it never, there's a problem basically with this humanitarian corridors not being granted, which basically blocks us to go. And there's a lot of reasons, like there's the roads are heavily mined and trucks are not able to go. Just to wrap up, there are immediate continuing needs on the ground. Still there, both from for IDPs and including the communities hosting the displaced populations. So in terms of the large scaling up the aid, that's of course our main aim. There are also a number of practical problems on the ground because of that. The issues of the supply chain being affected, both in the local on the local markets here. The procurement on the local one is heavily affected, and also the issues of the humanitarian partners, NGOs, including us. The mobility because of the security situation is also affected, but scale up is on the way. The pipelines are coming. So far we managed the 95,000 core relief items we managed to that already arrived, and we have 550,000 items that are on the pipeline to come in coming 2 weeks. Just to say that from our side, there's of course the huge commitment from UNHCR and the NGO partners throughout the areas, both in the east and in the different areas, including the west, being on the ground and trying to deliver the assistance. So that's basically what we are aiming to, being as much as possible scaling up on the ground.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mahir. Very precious contribution. And we'll have another voice also from the ground, avec le Comité international de la Croix-Rouge, qui est évidemment un opérateur important. Et nous avons la chance d'avoir avec nous Patrick Vial. Patrick, peut-être en 2 minutes, très rapidement, qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire sur votre vision du conflit en Ukraine et ce que peut faire la Croix-Rouge? Merci Patrick, nous vous passons la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'll try to be very brief and just want to highlight, I won't comment the humanitarian situation in Ukraine. Maxime, my colleague from Ukraine Red Cross has done that very well. I just want to reiterate the importance of the partnership we have with the Ukraine Red Cross in meeting the immensity of the humanitarian needs, but also the fact that our partnership, and I think Maxime mentioned it, also allows us to integrate the capacities and the expertise of many other national societies, Red Cross from Europe and beyond. So it's a worldwide effort on the part of the Red Cross, excuse me, and Red Cross movement. A red pillar response, collective response. For its part, ICRC, as you know, has a very special role to play according to the mandate that it has received from the signatories to the Geneva Convention, and we try to fulfill that mandate to the best of our ability. One of these functions is to visit prisoners of war, etc. But a very important one that some people have touched upon is also to remind the parties to the conflict about their obligation with regard to international humanitarian law, and also to support them in fulfilling their obligation. I take this opportunity to encourage the member states of European Union and the European Union Commission and authorities as well to do the same, to support the parties to the conflict, encourage them to fulfill their IHL obligation. And in this regard, and I will finish with this, I would like to stress how important it is to preserve a neutral humanitarian space, a space that allows the ICRC, but also other neutral and impartial humanitarian actors to engage with the parties in sometimes very difficult discussions. So we need to be shielded from the political discourse that is very normal, but extremely polarized and makes sometimes our life a bit difficult. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Patrick. Il est temps de conclure notre table ronde parce que nous avons une petite contrainte de temps, parce que nous avons ensuite la clôture de notre forum qui se déroulera d'ailleurs dans cette salle. Et I would invite the people to stay in that room for the closing ceremony. And I'm glad also to welcome with us the Minister for International Cooperation from Sweden. Madame la Ministre, soyez la bienvenue. Je vais maintenant passer la parole à Hans qui va tirer les conclusions de cette table ronde sur l'Ukraine avant de finir avec un représentant du gouvernement ukrainien. Hans, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stéphane, and allow me to start by thanking the French presidency for the important steer and for leading by example in so much of the relief efforts. What I have seen in terms of offers of assistance from France in the last few weeks is nothing short but impressive. So thank you very much for that. And I also want to thank the humanitarian partners and the member states here for the excellent work you're all doing. I want to thank you for the very, very powerful testimonies we've heard just now. Despite the very challenging operational environment, humanitarian assistance is on its way, is being delivered, and is being scaled up. We should not be complacent. It is important to strive for more. We're in a unique, unprecedented situation with unprecedented needs. And so we need to strive for a lot more assistance and try and scale up further. I also have to ask the donors community to swiftly pass from pledges to action and to make sure that our assistance on the ground is operational and is also delivered in the hard-to-reach areas. And I just want to recall the plea also made by WFP around food security beyond the end of April, which is not that far away from today. Respect for international humanitarian law is obviously a key message that we've heard from many today. The lack of unhindered humanitarian access remains a key concern, and we will certainly continue to advocate for unblocking it, and I invite you all to join us in that. The EU will continue to play a strong coordination role. We will maintain our presence in Ukraine as well as in the other countries around Ukraine. We have a colleague there and we are bringing more staff, a colleague in Ukraine already, and we're bringing more colleagues into Ukraine as we speak. We will use our instruments in full complementarity and to their full potential. As I said before, I have never been more impressed with the work that has been done under the Civil Protection Mechanism as well as under the Humanitarian Aid Funding Instrument. And of course, we will liaise with EU member states, key donors and partners, and I want to echo there the very important messages that were given by Karolina earlier on, our colleague from Poland, on the importance of close coordination with Ukraine and the importance to try and respond very precisely to the needs as expressed by the Ukrainian authorities. And she also mentioned the importance of the Team Europe approach in helping Ukraine and also in helping the others, and certainly Moldova is very dear to our hearts, but also our Polish, Slovak and Czech colleagues. So I hope that today's event was a source of inspiration to continue in this direction and to